everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. Today we are filming a video that I've been excited to film for ages. I've been meaning to do a video like this at some point, never got around to it, but with Valentine's Day coming, with that romantic season coming, I thought it would be fun to talk about some of my favorite romance books and also my favorite romances in books. When I say those two things, there is a difference. There are books that are specifically for the romance. They are based on the romance. They are in the romance genre. But there are also some romances and couples and like relationships that I really, really love in some books that are actually in books that are not romances. They're in fantasies or general fiction or just books that are not completely based off of the romance. So I thought I would tell you about both of them today. So we're gonna go through my favorite romance books and then my favorite romances in books. But before we get into either of those, I want to tell you a little bit about the sponsor of today's video, which is Luisa. So I am always grateful to my sponsors for allowing me to bring you these videos on a regular basis. And Luisa is just really awesome and they are one of my favorite brands to talk about. They are a really amazing sustainable jewelry brand with high quality pieces and no luxury markup to their prices. They are carbon neutral. They offset 100% of their carbon emissions from the sourcing of their materials to the disposal of their pieces. Their pieces are also super long lasting. They're made from the best noble materials and they come with a 365-day warranty. And on top of that, they are committed to limited batches, ensuring the highest production standard while eliminating excessive waste. Aside from all those amazing things about their brand, their jewelry itself is just so stunning. And I've worn their pieces in many of my other videos and they are like my go-to jewelry for every day. And today I have 3 new pieces to talk about. So on my ears here, I'm wearing 2 pairs of earrings right now. So the first in my second piercing is the Ashley hoops. And these are just such adorable little hoops with some Swarovski pearls on them. And they're just so adorable and timeless and classic, which I absolutely love. And they're small enough to just stick on my second piercing as well. Next, I'm wearing the Tia medium gold hoops. These are a gorgeous pair of really thick hoops that I've been looking for everywhere. I wanted some big, bold hoops, and these just fit the bill perfectly. And then finally, I'm wearing this gorgeous pair of hoops called the Reverso hoops, and these ones are so cool because they have cubic zirconia on the front, but they've also got them on the inside of the back of the hoops, so it sort of looks like an optical illusion so that you can always see the shining gems. And I absolutely love it. It looks so gorgeous and just catches your eye from across the room. So yeah, I'm totally in love with all of these pieces, and I think with Valentine's Day coming, you might be looking for a gift to grab for yourself or for someone special, or you might be thinking to send a hint to someone special. So Luisa's pieces are definitely ones you can grab for that occasion. And of course, I have a special offer for all of you. If you use the link in my description and sort of support me through there, you can grab a gift for you and a friend for up to 40% off, which is a really great deal. Luisa always has some great sales and no luxury markup, so it's just like the perfect place to get some really high quality jewelry that will last long and to keep in your collection and cherish for years to come. So with that said, I hope you'll click that link and check out Luisa. And now let's get into my favorite romance books and also my favorite romances in books. Alrighty, I have a ton of books to get through today, so we're gonna zip through all of these. I'm gonna give you a rundown of what they are, what I thought of them, and let you decide for yourself if you want to pick them up. The first book is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is one that I picked up really recently, I think in November of 2021, and absolutely devoured and loved. I picked this up with my patrons on Patreon and we read it together and had such a great time discussing it during our live show. And this one is basically about a professor and a PhD student who end up in a fake dating relationship and obviously fall in love. I really liked how this one had other things going for it aside from the romance, including a discussion of what it means to be a woman in STEM and the difficulties that come with that, and also like the struggles of academia. But what I really loved about this one was obviously the main couple. I feel like they had a really nice dynamic. He's definitely the grumpy, stoic guy who doesn't say much about his feelings and seems very standoffish and, you know, mean to other people, but he's a big softie to the main character. And I also actually really like the main character. I think she's really emotionally strong and also really cared about her friends, and seeing her sort of bring out the teddy bearness in him was just adorable. There are scenes of them like going out to get coffee and him like buying food for her because she's a poor PhD student, which I just loved. It was so adorable. There are some like really cringy, awkward scenes in this as they're like fake dating, but I just found them hilarious and loved every moment of it. And I devoured this one in basically a day because I was just so enraptured by the characters and I wanted to know what was going going to happen next. And the steamy scenes in this one were A++. I love the way that the author wrote them, and I just loved how they unfolded. There are only a couple, I feel like, but they were so worth it and it just overall added to the story. All right, next we have some of my favorite romances of 2021. The first one is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I really love the way Emily Henry writes romances, and this one basically is a little bit of a hate to love situation. It involves two writers who end up living next door to each other in their summer homes, and they're both trying to write a book and finish a book, but they are a bit of rivals, I would say. They both knew each other from university, and the main character is a romance writer and he is a like mystery thriller slash general fiction writer, and she's always like felt like he has done better in his career than she has. And so the two of them, you know, begrudgingly start off as neighbors, and then they end up getting into this pact to sort of write a book from the other person's genre. So he's gonna write a romance book and she's gonna write a like general fiction, you know, serious book. And from there they sort of start a bit of a friendship, I would say, and I just loved the dynamic between the two main characters. I loved their banter. I loved seeing them sort of connect over something that they share together. And I also feel like this book had some really emotional moments to it. The main character is going through some grief. Her father has passed away, but there's like a really complicated relationship going on there. And I just love the book overall, I think. This one also had an incredible pacing. Like I read this, I think in like a day or two because I just wanted to see where the relationship was going and I was so invested in the characters. This one definitely had a really, really nice build up. Like I was just like aching for them to get together. And there were also a few really nice steamy scenes in this one as well. And finally, of course, just the overall angst of this just got me in the feels. I think that's one of the things I love about Emily Henry. She has a way of building in some really nice angst into her relationships. The next book is another Emily Henry, and that is People We Meet on Vacation. This one is definitely a friends to lovers romance, and it is set over basically a decade. It involves two best friends, Poppy and Alex, who used to go on these yearly vacations together, and they have been in like other relationships throughout this decade, and they have been friends throughout this decade, but they've never actually crossed the line into becoming something more. But everything sort of changed 2 years ago when something went wrong on one of their vacations, and so they haven't really spoken since. And so the book begins with Poppy reaching out to Alex, asking him to go on another vacation with her in order to mend their relationship. And from there we get scenes from their vacation right now, and then we also get chapters from their previous vacations. So 2 summers ago, 3 summers ago, and so on and so on. And you're seeing how their relationship has changed and morphed over the years, and sort of the angsty build of their relationship and how they have missed so many opportunities to be together because they were just scared to take that leap. This one just had me in a chokehold. I needed to know how it was gonna end. I needed them to be together, and I just loved the angstiness of the relationship. I do think this one was a lot more focused on the relationship and like the different personalities that the characters had, whereas Beach Read felt more focused on the main character, I would say. I'm not really sure if I'm explaining that right, but regardless, I absolutely loved both. I do think Beach Read had like a little bit more of a special place in my heart, but I really loved this friends to lovers relationship, and like it's one that always gets me in the feels, and this was definitely like the best friends to lovers relationship I've seen done. All right, next, if you're looking for some romances, I would highly recommend the Brown Sisters trilogy by Talia Hibbert. These books are so adorable and have some really great steamy scenes as well, but each book actually follows a different sister from this like family and their separate relationships, and they're all very different, I would say, and so the relationships are therefore different. Get a Life Chloe Brown follows Chloe, who has been in a slightly near-death experience, and so she decides to get a life and do something about her life and, you know, try to live more. And so she moves out and gets her own place, and she's determined to try all these things, and she has sort of like a bucket list of things she wants to do, but she ends up sort of falling for the superintendent, I would say. I think that's what he is, at her building, and she also ends up helping him with the marketing for his art, and he helps her carry out her bucket list as well. This one wasn't my favorite out of the 3. I think this was actually my least favorite, but I did think it was really cute, and it had a really great representation of the main character's chronic illness and chronic pain, and it also had some really great steamy scenes as well. The next book is Take a Hint, Danny Brown, which is probably my favorite out of the 3. This one involves a fake dating romance between a PhD student and a security guard at the university, and he actually moonlights as the coach for like these young kids, I think in rugby, but I can't remember. And they end up in a fake dating romance to like help with the PR for his team and help him get more funding, I think. And what I loved about this one was the fake dating romance aspect, but also the male main character. I really liked him. He was very stoic on the outside, but just a muffin on the inside, which is a dynamic I absolutely love. And I also really liked the main character in this one, Dani. She is very much a go-getter. She knows what she wants, but she's also afraid of love. And I just love that dynamic in romances. So I thought this one was really cute, and the steamy scenes in this one were fantastic. And then the last Talia Hibbert book is Act Your Age, Eve Brown. This one was probably my second favorite, and I really enjoyed this one as well. It has some really great autistic rep, and it features a main character who is basically like in her late 20s, and her family's like, you need to get a job, you need to figure out your life, you need to act your age. And so they basically give her an ultimatum to get a job, or she has to move out and figure things out herself. And so she ends up in a search for a job and ends up meeting the love interest who owns a bed and breakfast, which is sort of in a bit of trouble because he can't find a cook, and he ends up hiring Eve as his cook, and the two of them don't really like each other at the beginning. It's very much like a hate to love situation. Well, hate to begrudgingly liking each other to love. And I really liked the sort of progression of their relationship, but I also really liked the male main character because he comes off very prickly and blunt and rude, but as you learn more about him, you start to understand him a lot more and see how their relationship develops. I also just really liked the tension between them as like the romance is building before they actually get together. That was fantastic, and the steamy scenes were also just great. All right, the next ones aren't necessarily like primarily romances or in the romance genre, but I personally feel like the main storyline is focused around the romances, and so for that reason I would consider them like romance books. So the first one is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. This one has a lot of other things going for it. I will say that it is more of a historical fiction and really deals with the main character's personal struggles and things she's going through as the decades pass in this book. But I do think that the romance plays a huge part in the book, and it is a driving force in the book as well. A lot of the plot is driven forward by various love stories, not just the main couple's one, but also other love stories, which I really enjoyed. So I feel like if you're looking for a really heartbreaking romance, this is definitely the one to pick up. Obviously not really any steamy scenes, but just if you're looking for an aching love story, one that's going to leave you in tears by the end, this is definitely the one to pick up. If you're not familiar with this one, it starts in our present day when this woman is going to meet this man that she used to know in 1950s Tehran, and you find out that they were in love back then, but they were ripped apart for unforeseen circumstances. And from there we sort of flash back to 1950s, and you're trying to figure out what happened and why they were ripped apart and all these things. And it is quite focused on the romance. At the beginning, there's like a middle section where there is a lot in the main character's perspective, where she's dealing with a lot of different emotions, but I do feel like the crux of the story is the romance. All right, the next romance book I have is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one, I say a romance book because I feel like it has a lot of other things going for it as well. It talks about Hollywood. It is slightly historical because it follows this woman's career in Hollywood from the 50s until like present day. It basically begins with this magazine reporter being given the opportunity to interview this big star, Evelyn Hugo, Hollywood star, and get down her big secrets and her biography basically, and find out all the secrets of her 7 different relationships with her 7 different husbands. And so we follow Evelyn Hugo through the decades of her life, and you are seeing the various relationships that she went through, but there's one lasting romance in the middle of all of it, which was just so fantastic. And I think the romance aspects of this were really the focus, and how all these characters were falling in love and being in love and trying to make their love work in a world that may not have let them. But yeah, I do feel like this one isn't completely about the romance. There are a lot of other things going on, you know, talking about Evelyn Hugo's career, about being a woman in Hollywood, about sort of the expiration date on women in Hollywood. And overall, it's just so interesting, and I absolutely loved it. But the romance is a really big part. And then the next in-between romance book that I have is The Beautiful Ones by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This one is usually classified as a fantasy, and while there is a little bit of a magical aspect to this, I definitely feel like this is mostly a romance. It is very much focused on the relationships of the characters and the way that they're falling in love and out of love, and how their lives are derailed by their emotions. This one definitely feels like a Jane Austen novel. It is set in some sort of historical period in, I think, France, and it follows 3 different main characters whose relationships are quite tangled, and it's a bit of a love triangle, but I loved the progression of the romances and how some characters fall out of love and how some characters fall in love, and by the end of it, I just loved it. It had all the vibes. If you like Bridgerton and if you like Jane Austen romances, this is definitely one to pick up because it was just so fantastic. And finally, the last romance book that I need to mention is, of course, one of my all-time faves, and that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. As I was saying with The Beautiful Ones, I absolutely love Jane Austen, and obviously this is like the OG that everyone loves, but I can never get enough of Lizzie and Darcy. I could read this book 1,000 times over and never get tired of Darcy making an ass of himself proposing to Lizzie, and just overall love everything. I will say Darcy is a bit of an ass. I think everyone knows this, but I just love how this book is written and the progression of their relationship and just seeing the whole thing unfold. I also really love the 2005 adaptation with Matthew McFadyen and Keira Knightley. I will never accept another adaptation as the one true adaptation because that one just has my heart and I love their chemistry. But yeah, love this so much. If you needed another push to pick up a classic, if you needed a push to pick up Jane Austen, this is your push. All right, with that said, we are done talking about my favorite romance books, and we are now into part 2 of this video where I talk about my favorite romances in books. So all these books are from a different genre than romance, but they have a relationship or a romance in them that I absolutely adore. So the first one I want to talk about is The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chokshi. As many of you know, this is one of my all-time favorite books. It's a fantasy set in the 1800s, and the romance that I love in this one, there's actually multiple, but my ultimate favorite romance in this one is between Lila and Severin. They are characters that I just absolutely adore. I love their dynamic. They're very supportive of each other and care a lot for each other, but they just can't seem to take that extra step to be together and really abandon their own personal pursuits to be together. And it's just so like angsty and makes you ache and you just want them to be together by the end. And I do really like the progression of their relationship across the series as well. This is the first book, there are 3 books, and by the end of the 3rd book you are just like left breathless and just crying. If you've ever seen my reading blog for the last book, you know I like sobbed dramatically at the end of that book. And part of the reason is because of the way that this relationship progresses. And I don't want to say more than that because I don't want to spoil you guys, but I really adore these 2 characters together. Very similarly, I cannot go without mentioning my favorite relationship in a fantasy book ever, which is Kaz and Inej in the Six of Crows duology. I absolutely lost it getting to see them on screen in the Shadow and Bone show, and they were just perfectly what I imagined for those characters. Their dynamic was absolutely perfect, but truly I love those characters without a doubt. I love their dynamic. Inej is a very supportive character, but she is also her own person in her own right. She has her own things that she wants, and she's also a very caring person and wants the best out of people, but also in the world. Whereas Kaz is a very damaged person. He's been through a lot in his life and he can't seem to like heal through all of his trauma to be with Inej, and that's part of the reason why they can't really get together. And they both are also unable to let go of their own personal things that they want and ambitions to be together. But you see all that unfold in the books and I just love it. I love their dynamic. There is an element of like throughout the books seeing the way that Kaz has to sort of come to the realization of how much he values Inej, which is a storyline and sort of plot line and character development that I really like because it just leaves you with so many like angsty feelings and I just love everything about it. I love sad angsty romances for some reason, so here we are. Also, before I stop talking about this, I must also mention that there are just some incredible lines that both these characters say in both of the books in the duology that have just become so iconic that I could never stop thinking about them. Speaking of sad, angsty romances, the next couple that I want to talk about is June and Day in Legend, or the Legend series. These are a pair of characters that I really, really love. I love them both individually and also love the progression of their relationship in the series. Basically, if you don't know, this is a dystopian series and involves a futuristic version of the States. It's been split into sort of 2 different sides, the Republic and the colonies. So both these characters are from the Republic, which has a very like sort of horrible ruling structure. And Day is basically this poor kid who has become sort of a symbol for the people, whereas June is a soldier of the Republic. And she's sort of tasked with hunting down Day at the beginning of the first book. Obviously the plot develops from there over the 3 books, the 3 original books. But what I love about their relationship in the series is that they were never meant to be together. They were pitted against each other from the beginning. Like she's basically hunting him. And because of the nature of their circumstances, they have done sort of horrible things in their own rights, and so there's a lot of like baggage involved in the relationship, I feel like. But regardless, they still care for each other, and so it makes a really complicated relationship, and by the end you're just like, should they be together or should they not? But then you really want them to be together, and then there's like all of these sad things happening, and my heart was just aching. Again, like Bronze Beast, the last book of the Gilded Wolves series, I sobbed dramatically at the end of this series, at the end of Champion, and part of the reason was because of this relationship. So yeah, love it so, so much. If you're looking for a sad, angsty, like they can't be together because of circumstances larger than themselves, this is definitely the book to pick up. On the note of Marie Lu, who wrote the Legend series, I also really love the romance in Warcross. This book is a duology. The second book is called Wildcard, and I actually really love the romance and how it progresses in this book specifically. It is one of those like sort of whirlwind romances where the two characters have a lot in common and fall in love in a really natural way. I really loved just seeing how that romance progressed, and like was at the edge of my seat waiting for them to get together. This one definitely has like some great twists and turns by the end of the book, which complicate their relationship for the second book, but I absolutely love how it progresses. If you're unfamiliar with Warcross, it follows our main character, Amika Chen, who is a bounty hunter for criminals on this game called Warcross. And Warcross is basically this game that has swept the world. It's sort of a virtual reality game, kind of like Capture the Flag, and it was created by this young man named Hideo Tanaka. Lives in Japan, and the book sort of begins when Amika accidentally glitches herself into a championship game in Warcross and catches Hideo's attention, and so he flies her out to Japan to do a job for her. He wants her to catch a hacker in the game that is sort of wreaking havoc. And from there, things progress, and there's a bit of a mystery to it as you're trying to figure out who the hacker is, and there are a lot of revelations, but really, really loved the relationship between Amika and Hideo. All right, the next romance or relationship that I really like in a book is Achilles and Patroclus in the Song of Achilles. This one is a booktube, book talk, bookstagram favorite. Everyone loves this book or hates it, depending on who you are. But this is a very heartbreaking book that will leave you in tears by the end, and is based off of Greek mythology, specifically the Iliad, and it follows the life of Achilles from when he's a kid to when he fights in the Trojan War, and it is actually told from the perspective of Patroclus, who is one of his childhood friends who he falls in love with and who comes with him to the war in Troy. The romance in this was just so beautiful and echoes the mythology, but what I really love about this is just the way that Patroclus loves Achilles, just the way that he expresses his love, the way that he's there for him throughout the book, and sort of the lengths that he's willing to go to for Achilles. There are definitely aspects of this romance where I wish like Achilles was a better person, but I think just seeing the romance from Patroclus's perspective and what he's willing to do is just so beautiful and heartbreaking, and by the end you're just like sobbing because you just want the best for him and Achilles. But regardless, just a beautiful and like tragic romance. Alrighty, the next relationship slash romance that I absolutely love is from Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and this is between Laszlo and Sarai, the two main characters of this book. And this is the type of romance that is like so magical, I would say, and beautiful to read about. The way they fall in love is just like so breathtaking, I would say, because it partly happens in dreams, which is a weird thing to say. But basically the premise of this book is that it's set in this fantasy world, and it follows our main character, Laszlo, who has grown up on these stories of this lost city called Weep, but that's actually not its name. It was a name that was given to it after its real name was stolen by magic, and people were made to sort of forget. And so he has grown up on these stories and dreamed of being there and going there, and when a delegation from the lost city of Weep actually comes to his hometown looking for different experts to solve a problem in their city, he obviously jumps at the chance to go travel there and finally see this place that he's only dreamed of. But when he gets there, obviously many things are revealed and sort of the mystery of the place is unraveled as he learns more. And part of that mystery is Sarai, who has this unique ability to give people nightmares or also dreams. And so part of that entails being able to enter people's dreams, including Laszlo, who has some of the most beautiful dreams ever. He's definitely an imaginative person, and it's just so beautiful seeing the way that they fall in love. This one definitely has a bit of a tragic tint to it, especially if you read the second book, but overall I love it so much. I love these two characters together and also separately themselves. Like both their characters are just fantastic. So highly recommend if you're looking for a very enchanting romance and also fantasy. All right, the next one is of course one that I can't go without mentioning, which is Laia and Elias in the Ember Quartet. I almost forgot this one, I don't know how, but these two characters have my heart. The progression of their relationship over the 4 books in this YA fantasy series was just fantastic. And I just love the character growth in their respective characters as well. This one is a bit of a hard fantasy to explain, but just know that Laia starts out as a slave and becomes a rebel, and then Elias starts out as a soldier and ends up also becoming a rebel. And they're fighting against an empire, but also some magical forces that are much larger than themselves. This series actually involves both the characters being in other relationships as well, but through it all there is a thread of them caring for each other and falling for each other across the 4 books. And I think just the way that the plot works and continuously sort of keeps them apart was just so heartbreaking to see, and also just really added to the romance. I feel like this is definitely another like angsty romance that I loved and could not get enough of. There are definitely like really iconic scenes in their romance as well, from the first book to like the last book, and I loved it overall. So if you're looking for a nice long YA fantasy series, and if you're looking for a romance that sort of develops over multiple books, this is definitely one to pick up. All right, I have 2 more romances in books that I want to talk about, but both of these are sort of my OG faves, ones that I read growing up that I can never stop loving. So the first one is, of course, the iconic ship that many a person has written fan fiction about, and that is Percy and Annabeth in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. So this is by Rick Riordan. This is the original Rick Riordan Percy Jackson series, and this is actually the 4th book that I'm holding up, The Battle of the Labyrinth. And the reason I'm holding up this one is because I feel like this is the book where their relationship really ramps up and progresses, and you see a lot more going on with them. This one has a special place in my heart because I read it when I was growing up, and basically the dynamic between them is that like Percy is basically the dumb jock and Annabeth is the smart girl, and obviously he is the hero prophesized and all of that, and she starts out sort of not his friend in the first book and then begrudgingly his friend, and then they become sort of best friends by the end of the series and also start falling for each other in especially this book. And I just love the progression of their relationship. Obviously they're like also growing up throughout the series, so it makes more sense that like they start falling for each other when they're a little bit older, but love it regardless. And there's just so many iconic moments between them that like I can never forget and never let go of. All right, and then the last romance or relationship that I want to talk about is one of my all-time favorites, and that is Will and Tessa from the Infernal Devices. The series is by Cassandra Clare, and this is the prequel to the Mortal Instruments series, and it involves like the ancestors, I would say, of the Mortal Instruments characters. And I feel like Will and Tessa are like a fave for many people, but this series involves a bit of a love triangle and also involves a relationship between Tessa and Jem. And they all sort of really care for each other as well. And I feel like this is a really well done love triangle in general. But regardless of that, I feel like Will and Tessa are still my favorite, and seeing their relationship develop over the 3 books was just so enchanting. And I just really love them together. They have really great banter. They bring out better parts of each other, and all the moments that just happen in the books just kill me and always get me in the feels, and I always think back to this book and think of those 2. So yeah, I would love to hear from any of you who are watching, who's your favorite in this series? Is it Will and Tessa, or is it Tessa and Jem? I may 100% Will shipper, but that's just me. I just love them so much. Alrighty, with that said, those are all of my favorite romance books and also romances in books. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and found a new romance to pick up and fall in love with. I feel like all these are really great to pick up in the lead up to and on Valentine's Day if you're looking for something romantic to read. And as always, I would love to hear from you guys. What are some of your favorite romance books, and what are some of your favorite romances in books that are not traditionally romance books? And also if there are any relationships or romances that I mentioned in this video that you actually didn't really like, I would love to hear that as well. Thank you again to Ana Luisa for sponsoring this video. You guys should definitely go grab a gift for yourself and someone special and get up to 40% off using the link in my description. As always, it really helps me out when you guys click those links and you use those discount codes, so I really appreciate those of you who do use them. And if you haven't already, go check out my Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and TikTok in the description down below, and I will see you in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!